Having spent time with many of Mandela's family members over the years, I speak to you today with humility, mindful of how much the man they loved means to so many.
What's the real intention behind Harry's speech? What are the implications of his statements? And how are these statements psychologically relevant to one of his recent interviews? Harry's speech is a call to action, which is an unusual move for someone in his position. I'll analyze his speech and interview with psycholinguistics and constitutive rhetoric. If you like the video, click the like button and share it. Also, consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribing results in more videos. Let's dive in. A few facts about constitutive rhetoric, which is when a speaker creates a collective identity that the viewers ideally identify themselves with. Linguistically, the speaker forces a self-understanding upon the audience in order to persuade them and get them to do something. There are 3 ideological effects. Each effect is applied by the speaker for self-serving reasons, to ensure that the audience is on their side. The first effect is about creating identification across social classes, a collective we or a collective protagonist. We is used uncritically as an all-encompassing pronoun. And the second effect is about making this we transhistorical, alleging that it's been in existence for a long time. The speaker disregards the possible objection that people and events of the past can't be directly linked to present-day people and events. Because the speaker's goal is to show or make it seem like we're all connected and always have been. Once we've identified these 2 effects, we'll get to the third and most consequential effect. Harry uses Mandela's life story and alleged personality to introduce the problems he sees in the world today. He starts with a narrative involving his mother, Diana. Narratives are used by politicians and other influential people for emotional effect, to make speeches more personal. Harry uses personal pronouns and reminiscing facial expressions, and he taps into the public perception of Diana as being good and pure.
For me, there's one photo in particular that stands out. On my wall and in my heart every day is an image of my mother and Mandela meeting in Cape Town in 1997. But when I first looked at the photo, straight away what jumped out was the joy on my mother's face, the playfulness, cheekiness even, the pure delight to be in communion with another soul so committed to serving humanity.
Notice the predominant pathos. The speech almost just started, and Harry's already referred to his heart, and he says soul, not person. He says Diana was delighted to be in communion with another soul,
so committed to serving humanity.
This is omniscient narration, which is commonly used in fiction and journalism, which is also fiction sometimes. This kind of narration adds to the emotional impact. The narrator, Harry, slides in and out of the feelings of the characters in the narrative. As such, we have no idea of knowing if Diana was smiling because of the reason Harry states. Harry is the one who makes that connection, because this is his narrative. Harry proceeds with differentiating Mandela from other people. This could look like a contradiction of the first and second ideological effect. However, as we see later on, Harry links certain Mandela traits to modern-day people.
I've come to understand the man through his legacy, the letters he wrote alone in his prison cell, the speeches he delivered to his people. Here was a man with the weight of the world on his shoulders, asked to heal his country from the wreckage of its past and transform it for the future.
The words healing and transforming correspond to his mission statement in one of his recent interviews.
I don't know if you feel the same way. The only thing I want in my life is to feel like peaceful. You've lived in the United States for 2 years.
2 years already, yeah.
Do you feel peaceful now?
I don't know how many people feel truly peaceful, you know? At times I feel massively at peace. But with everything that's going on in the world and trying to help and trying to use the platform and the influence to try and steer people to trying to help. And again, like, I think the biggest concern or the biggest issue that people wrestle with on a daily basis that does provide more anxiety for me and for them is the helplessness.
Yeah.
But what I've learned over the years is, certainly for myself, I find healing in helping others. And I think that's what we should really be focusing on.
I love that.
He says that at times he feels massively at peace, even though massively is a strong word. The conjunction but, which minimizes that which preceded it, gives more weight to all the times when he doesn't feel peaceful. And he ends up saying that healing through helping others is what we should be focusing on, which negates the peacefulness that the interviewer brought up. Harry places more emphasis on the things that don't make him feel peaceful. This point is crucial to this video's conclusion, so let's keep it in mind. The association with other people and the element of struggle are also present in Harry's speech. But first, he keeps creating sympathy for Mandela by making him sound extraordinary.
A man who had lost 27 years with his children and family that he would never get back. 27 years. Yet in that photo and so many others, he is still beaming, still able to see the goodness in humanity.
Harry's pauses and repetitions are not by accident. Pauses and repetitions have been part of rhetoric since the term pathos was coined. Next, Harry mentions the long time Mandela spent in prison, and he asks these rhetorical questions.
In those circumstances, how many of us would have lost hope and let our life belts slip away? How many of us would have been broken by a system designed to do exactly that? And let's be honest, how many of us are in danger of losing those life belts right now?
Let's be honest is a very strong presupposition, implying that if you don't agree with Harry, you're not being honest. The next part of Harry's speech is a request to all people to find the power within to fight what Harry perceives as unjust, the same way Mandela did. And the fact is, he's already compared himself to Mandela, because seconds earlier he said this.
Yet in that photo and so many others, he is still beaming, still able to see the goodness in humanity, still buoyant with a beautiful spirit that lifted everyone around him. Not because he was blind to the ugliness, the injustices of the world, no, he saw them clearly. He had lived them, but because he knew we could overcome them. In our own time, a time of global uncertainty and division, when it's all too easy to look around and feel anger or despair, I've been inspired to go back to Mandela's writings for insight into how this could be.
Harry's describing his own ideals through the general perception of Mandela. Between the lines, Harry actually says that he knows we can overcome the problems, that he believes it's too easy to feel anger or despair. We know this because of the pronoun I he uses at the end.
I've been inspired to go back to Mandela's writings for insight into how this could be.
Harry speaks to all of us as a Mandela-like authority, calling us to remember the supposed brave freedom fighter inside us all.
How many of us feel battered, helpless, in the face of the seemingly endless stream of disasters and devastation? I understand. This has been a painful year in a painful decade.
We know that feelings of helplessness are also part of Harry's personality. He revealed as much in one of his recent interviews when talking about burnout.
I think that, the cheekiness is something that keeps you alive. As I said, there's so much to be happy about in the outside world, but there's also so much to worry about. My sort of mantra now every day is, and it's a dangerous one because I need to make sure that I don't have burnout, but is trying to make the world a better place for my kids. Otherwise, what's the point in bringing kids into this world?
He keeps referring to world problems and wanting to make the world a better place. This is his go-to response. But also, it's worth noting how his word choice and syntax keep emphasizing the things he worries about. Maybe because the truth is that he's not only fighting outside problems, but also inner problems. It's a lot easier to feel close to burnout when you have problems within, rather than outside problems that all people in theory have a responsibility to help solve. So the questions are, Does he himself have this bravery, or is he projecting the inner qualities he would like to have? Is this really one big pep talk to himself to avoid the burnout, which is obviously on his mind? When he says a painful decade, is he really talking about the world, or could he, in part, be talking about himself and his changed circumstances? These are relevant psychological questions. Next, it's time for the first and second ideological effect, creating a strong collective we connected to Mandela's alleged inequalities, which by definition makes this pronoun transhistorical.
Climate change wreaking havoc on our planet. We are witnessing a global assault on democracy and freedom, the cause of Mandela's life. According to Freedom House, our world has grown less free every year. As so often happens in history, the consequences of decisions made by some of the most powerful people in some of the wealthiest countries are being felt even more deeply across the continent of Africa. And what is happening in Africa is not an isolated event. The drought there is a reflection of extreme weather we are seeing across the globe. As we sit here today, our world is on fire, again. And these historic weather events are no longer historic. More and more, they are part of our daily lives.
Harry just compared the historic weather events to the present, saying that they're now part of everyday life. That's the second ideological effect in full effect. Now that this phase has been established, it's time for a call to action, which is the intention behind the third and most consequential, not to mention controversial, effect.
Unless the countries represented by the seats in this hallowed hall make the decisions, the daring, transformative decisions that our world needs to save humanity. The only question is whether we will be brave enough and wise enough to do what is necessary. So yes, this is a pivotal moment. We can grow apathetic, succumb to anger, or yield to despair. Or we can do what Mandela did every single day inside that 7 by 9 foot prison cell on Robben Island. We can find meaning and purpose in the struggle.
As I mentioned in the beginning, the second effect is about getting people to look past the potential misalignments between past struggles and present-day struggles. Critics would say that Mandela's causes were quite different from the causes that Harry wants us to fight for today. That using Mandela's life story as a stepping stone could be perceived as opportunistic. Constitutive rhetoric is used by speakers and writers to make the audience forget such an objection. The conclusion of the linguistic part of this analysis is clear. Harry appeals to a collective we, a we that's called to fight for freedom. However, it can be argued that he's a little all over the place, talking about both democracy and climate. But the call to action is unmistakable and surprising. The conclusion of the psycholinguistic part of this analysis is more complicated and interesting, and we need to look at a few more clips from one of his recent interviews to get to the bottom of it. Looking at his speech, it's clear that Harry identifies himself with Mandela's alleged personality traits, at least for this occasion, but at the same time, it's clear that the words burnout and helplessness are on his mind for a reason. In his recent interview, he's asked about missing his father and brother, and this is still a sensitive subject to him.
But do you miss your brother, your dad?
Look, I mean, for me, at the moment, I'm here focused on these guys and these families and giving everything I can, 120% to them, to make sure that they have the experience of a lifetime.
Yeah.
That's my focus here. And then when I leave here, I get back and my focus is my family, who I miss massively.
You do, I bet.
Of course I do. They're two little people, you know.
Harry evades this very personal question by pointing to the families at the games and how much he misses his family in the US. On a surface level, it sounds like he merely wants to talk about something else because he's talked about it before. However, if Harry had truly processed these feelings, this question would be an easy one to answer. He makes it sound like he's good at compartmentalizing, that when he's at the games, he's focused on the games, and when he's with his family, he's focused on his family. However, the very way he evades the question suggests the reverse, that the interviewer's question struck a nerve. Harry continues to unreliably deny the importance of the change.
I was thinking about a new life, like you got a whole restart. You have a whole new focus, a whole new nucleus. How does that land with you?
No, I think the focus is very much the same. Right?
Is it?
Yeah, certainly from my and my wife's point of view.
Yeah.
For the two of us, this was a life that she signed up for, and that we were committed to doing together as a couple forever. Because of the circumstances, we've now moved that life of service to the States, and we'll continue to do what we were doing before. So in that regard, nothing's changed for us. It's just a little bit more complicated to have to sort of restart. If you know what I mean.
He says circumstances, which is general and distancing. Once again, he shows that these circumstances are sensitive to him, and very likely that he still hasn't come to terms with them. He says nothing's changed in that regard. This restriction foreshadows that something has changed in other regards, and in his very next sentence, we learn what it is he finds hard. He says it's just a little bit more complicated to have to sort of restart. There's a lot of downplaying going on here, which again shows sensitivity. Just and a little bit minimize how hard it is. A little bit is mitigation. He doesn't simply say restart. He says sort of restart. Sort of is hitching language, as opposed to direct and assertive language. Overall, Harry's words indicate that a lot has in fact changed, and that he's still processing things. This becomes even more obvious when he talks about his mother, the initial focus of his speech as well.
In these moments, do you ever feel your mom's presence?
No, for me, it's constant. It has been over the last 2 years, more so than ever before. It's almost as though she's done her bit with my brother, and now she's very much like helping me. Got him set up. Now she's helping me set up. That's what it feels like, He's got his kids. I've got my kids. The circumstances are obviously different, but no, I feel her presence in almost everything that I do now. But definitely more so in the last 2 years than ever before, without question. So she's watching over us.
Harry says he's felt her presence even more in the last 2 years, watching over us, as he says. On a surface level, this sounds heartwarming, but on a deeper psychological level, when comparing these words to the other observations, it's worth noting that this is likely a need he has, to feel like he's being watched over, exactly because of all the changes. Unlike his wife, Harry's in unfamiliar surroundings, unknown territory. So when he spends his speech talking about struggling, anger and despair, and trying to overcome problems, is he talking about outside problems, or is he really talking about himself? That he's trying but hasn't overcome. In light of the observations from the speech and his recent interview, and his statements in the Oprah interview, which I've analyzed in several videos, these are relevant questions, and the answers to these questions might turn out to reveal more about Harry's mental state than the state of the world. What do you think about his speech, and how would you answer the psychological questions? Let us know in the comments. See you in the next video.